Welcome back, everyone. I'm your host, Ioka Ehu, and this is Hawaii Real. Real people having real conversations. Today, I have a special guest for you guys. Ever wonder who's in charge behind the scenes of your local news? I've got just the person for you today. But first, I want you to click on that subscribe button below. We have several podcasts available to watch right now, and more are coming every week. So stay tuned. And for today's podcast, I'm proud to bring you the news director for Hawaii News Now, Scott Humber. Here we go. Welcome back to Hawaii Real. I am here with Hawaii News Now news director, Scott Humber. Today we're going to talk about fake news, social media, the Patriots.
There's no such thing as fake news.
No such thing as fake news? I don't know about that. All right, Scott. So how do you feel about fake news and all the stuff that's going on today with not only just local news, but national news? It's really big with the national news. It's a big problem with.
Sure.
I think it's a big issue with people, what people's impressions or perceptions are with regards to what's real content and what's not real content and stuff like that. How do you guys tackle that?
Well, it's an interesting issue, and it's something that we've had to deal with probably for the last 4 years since the current occupant of the White House has taken over. That term fake news has come up a lot. It's something that we have to look at on a regular basis, and the thing is, what I've come to find out is when viewers don't like a story, whatever side they fall on, now all of a sudden the term fake news gets put out. So I'll see emails a couple times a week that talk about fake news. And it's hard because we try to balance every story that we do, especially on the local level. And I'll combat whatever email I get as far as fake news. But really, I think where it's began, and this is where the difference is. There's a major difference between local news and cable news. Mm-hmm. Cable news is not news anymore.
Right.
10 years ago, cable news was news. They were great at breaking news. They were great at, being on in the big situations and stuff like now. Now, cable news, whether it's Fox or MSNBC or CNN, they are opinion shows. That's all they are. They put talking heads on there for an hour at a time, and it's just whatever side you fall politically is how that is. So it's not news. What we do is local news. That is where, our bread and butter is. It's about Hawaii. It's about the community. It's about what we are here. Mm-hmm. The difficult part of it is, when people throw that term out there, fake news, we take it serious. Every story has two sides. Sometimes there's three sides. We try to get every side. There are times we can't, and it makes it difficult. But we do our best to try to be as balanced as possible.
Is there ever a time when you're getting like those news stories or anything like that when you think it might be a fake news, or it might be, how do I put it, perceived as being fake news, and you guys just kind of avoid that story, or do you guys try to tackle it head on? No, we try to tackle,
on the local level, we try to tackle anything that we can take on, that we perceive is news. Mm-hmm. What I will say that we will do, and I can't talk for all news organizations. I can only talk for the one that I work for. I'm not afraid to hold a story until it's ready. Mm. And we have done that on a couple of occasions over the last couple of years, where we've held a story a lot longer than our competition has because I didn't feel like it was ready. I didn't feel like we had all the sides to it, and we needed a little bit more. Yeah. And so in a breaking news, era where everybody wants to be first to get something out there, to me, it doesn't matter if you're first. Nobody remembers who was first. Everybody remembers who was right. And I would rather be right with our stories than first with our stories.
Be first and then have to repair the damage if you've done something wrong.
And I'll tell you, in my own building, that's difficult because there are reporters and there are anchors that are itching to get stories onto the air that I'll pull back on and say, you know what, we're not ready yet. And I've gotten into some heated arguments in my own office about whether or not we should put a story on the air or not.
Yeah.
I'll give you a perfect example. The Kamehameha School's sex scandal with Dr. Brown a couple years ago, 2 years ago. We had that story roughly about a month ahead of time. And one thing that we had done differently than I've ever done with any story is we brought all the parties in. We brought Kamehameha Schools in. We brought St. Francis in. We brought the defendants in and met with them all off the record ahead of time because we wanted to gather as much information about this story before we just put something out that was as damaging as that story was.
So you guys doing your own investigations just to try to get that information?
A lot of the time we'll do our own investigations ahead of time.
That's like more traditional old school journalism, right? Like doing those investigations as opposed to what you see in modern cable news networks, how they're just like getting stuff on Twitter or something, Facebook, and just putting it out there as news. It's like, no.
Well, and I think the last couple of years for us, we've dedicated a lot of time to investigative journalism. I moved Lynn Kawano off the anchor desk and made her our chief investigative reporter because she has that tenacity. She has that. She will go and dig on a story, and she makes sure that it's right. And there's been a lot of those times over the last couple of years with stories that she's brought me that we've put on the air that I'm like, are you sure you're right here? Because we're one story away from a lawsuit, and so we make sure that we do our best to make sure that it is as ironclad as possible before we put it on the air. And so far, she's been pretty good on everything that she's done.
Now, you bring that up like you're one story away from a lawsuit, and then you have like these cable news networks that just, it seems like they don't care what they put out sometimes. Are they like held up to the same kind of lawsuit standards that you guys are, or is it something different? Like, I
think so, but I think they have a lot deeper pockets than we have.
So they just don't care?
They just don't care sometimes.
That's horrible. And I think, those cable news networks, they're the ones that are dividing the people. And
I agree.
With their opinions. Like you said, it's opinion-based news. It's not even really news. They have news and then they give their opinions on it.
Sure. Look how it was 4 years ago. 4 years ago, all Fox News did was hammer President Obama.
Yes.
At the end of his term. Now you have MSNBC and CNN hammering President Trump.
Yes.
That's all it's become.
Yeah.
That's all those networks have become. There's no more news on those stations. It's all, let's just get talking heads who will talk about what we want them to talk about.
It's like, here's what happened today. This is our opinion on it.
Yes.
And then you switch websites to the other news network, and it's like,
and it's the exact opposite.
It's the exact same thing that happened today. Here's what happened with it.
Sure.
It's like, okay, what?
Yeah.
So you kind of have to watch both or all three to kind of get a full picture of it. And do you think the American people are at that point where they're just like fed up with the two-sided fake news kind of thing going on?
I do. And I think you're starting to see it in their ratings. I think you're starting to see like a CNN in particular is slipping, and we're an affiliate of CNN, but their ratings have dove drastically. I think people are getting tired of it. They don't, we've got to go through our daily lives, and specifically here in Hawaii where it is difficult to live, day in and day out. Everybody's working multiple jobs, and last thing you want to come home to is, garbage talk on television for an hour or two every night. And I think less and less people are starting to watch that.
Yeah, because it starts to heat up the arguments inside the house.
Yes.
And emotions start running hot, and people do get tired of that. It was kind of exciting when it started to happen, a few years ago. But now it's just like, I just turn that off.
Yeah.
Don't even let that in the house.
I certainly think the president has lent to a lot of this in his way that he deals with things, whether it's via Twitter or his press conferences or stuff like that. So these cable news networks are just feeding off that, whether they're for him or against him. And it's created a divide in the American audience, to now you're a conservative or, you're a liberal, and it's like, okay, what side are you on? And there's a lot of bickering and infighting.
Yeah, it's like, what side are you on? If you're on the wrong side, I don't like you anymore, kind of thing. It's like,
I have found in the last few years more and more people are not willing to say whether they're a Republican or a Democrat. And more so now than I've ever seen before.
Yeah. And I think in the beginning, when I say the beginning, I mean like a year or so ago, when that started happening with people like not wanting to admit whether they're Democrat, Republican, conservative, or liberal. I look at it now, it's like, that's actually a good thing. Like, hold that to yourself, and just be a normal person dealing with normal people throughout your day, and just, what you have in your mind is what you have in your mind, and your opinions and, your thoughts and everything like that. It doesn't make you who you are. You can be a totally nice person and be a Republican. You can be a complete asshole and be a Republican, so it's like, well, being a Republican doesn't matter. It's, are you a nice person or are you an asshole?
Right. Well, and it's tough on a state like Hawaii is. It skews very Democratic, yet I will tell you, I hear from almost every Republican in the state because they'll complain about our coverage, one way or another. That's why I would rather us stick to local news rather than try to delve into more of the national landscape.
And there's more than enough local news to
keep
everyone busy. Yeah. Speaking of national news, how the Patriots doing?
We've had a couple of rough weeks.
Just got a new kicker. Got a new kicker from YouTube.
They're still. I think they cut him yesterday.
Oh, they did?
Yeah,
already.
Yeah. Look, they're 10-3 right now. I think they've got 3 easy games to wrap up the season. They're going to end up 13-3, but they might be the worst 13-3 team that I've ever seen.
They're in a good place, though, to make the playoffs.
They're in a good place to make the playoffs. And what I've learned over the many years that I've been a Patriots fan is do not, don't rule out Bill Belichick in any playoff game.
No, never.
Against anyone.
Never.
Because he is a genius and he will figure something out, And so I fully expect them to be there once again in the end.
Yeah. Do you feel like being a sports fan of not just a team, but like a geographical area, because you're from the Northeast, right? Mm-hmm. So the Celtics, Patriots, Bruins,
Red Sox,
right? So you're a hardcore fan of
hardcore, so much so that I purchase all the web streams to be able to continue to watch all the games back here.
Cool. Do you feel like the modern political climate with Democrats, Republicans, conservative, liberal is better or worse than hardcore sports fans like that, and the love and the hate that you guys get?
Oh, that's a good question.
Compare and contrast. Good.
I think the current political climate that we're in right now, it's very close. Mm-hmm. It's very close. I think Republicans and Democrats are going at each other so hard now. It's the same as the Red Sox and Yankees hatred.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I don't think we could have said that 5 or 6 years ago. Maybe some would have said we're getting there, but right now, absolutely. I think the hatred is. Yeah,
because the sports fans, you have like a lifelong hatred for other teams. Like with hockey, I'm a LA Kings fan for a long time. When the Vegas Knights came out, I decided to jump on board with the Vegas Knights. I love because I lived in Vegas. But I hate with a passion the San Jose Sharks. I hate them with a passion. Almost to the point where I don't like the city of San Jose. Sorry.
I hate the New York Yankees. Uh-huh. I hate the New York Jets. I hate the Montreal Canadiens. But
it's almost like, we should leave that at sports and not bring that into the political theater because, you do have to work together to get things done in a political spectrum, but sports is sports. That's the area where you can have your likes and dislikes and
it should stay.
Have riots and stuff. Don't have riots, people. Don't do that. Yeah, it should stay there. Stay in your lane, people. If you want to hate people, hate someone from
sports teams.
Hate sports teams
There's
from another city.
Hate sports teams.
No, there's nothing wrong. Support somebody. Support.
Right. I don't hate the people of New York or Montreal. I hate their teams.
I do hate the Montreal Canadiens, and I do hate the Vancouver Canucks. I don't like the Vancouver Canucks.
I've never been a fan of the Vancouver Canucks. I was glad when we beat them in the Stanley Cup in 2011.
Mm. Oh, yeah, Tim Thomas with the Bruins. Yep. Yes, that was great. Tim Thomas just came out because he retired from the Bruins, right? Tim Thomas was a goalie for the Bruins, and he just came out in the news think yesterday, the day before, saying that one of the reasons he retired so suddenly is because of concussions.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, "You're a goalie. What are you talking about?" It's like, no, you take cracks to the head a lot.
Yeah,
you know,
you know that full well.
Yeah. So concussions are like a huge thing that I think people nowadays are becoming more and more aware of that.
Well, it's changing the landscape of sports, especially in the more violent sports like football. The NFL's doing everything that they can at this point to try and cut down on those numbers. The surprising one to me, though, which I didn't know until my son started playing it, soccer.
Absolutely.
Tons of concussions.
And I keep saying that to people, to parents and stuff. I'm like, you're bouncing a ball on your kid's head like every day, all the time. Because they, one of the teams, one of the club teams that my kid was going to sign up for, like they wanted to practice headers all the time. Like every day for like 15 minutes, you should practice headers. It's like, that's a lot of impacts to your head. Yeah. Like you're talking thousands of impacts a year to your head. Minor impacts, small. Yeah, it's a soft ball, but sometimes when they're getting older, you see the ball get kicked up high into the air and it's coming down, and then they're jumping up to meet it and heading it. It's like,
well, the amazing thing now is there's a focus on it.
Good.
I mean, remember when we were kids, there wasn't that much focus on concussions. It was, you got hit hard, you got your bell ring, you got a little smelling salt, and it was like, get right back in there.
Yeah.
Now there's concussion protocols and, they'll keep you out of games and stuff like that. There wasn't any of that 20 years ago.
Nope.
It's a very different climate now. Mm-hmm. All for the better.
Absolutely.
It's absolutely for the better.
And take care of the kids and their heads, because their heads are so valuable. In this modern day of a high volume of social media, whether it be YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, how is the news tackling all of that? It's almost of an influx of too much information coming to the public. Do you guys follow that? Do you guys disseminate that? Do you guys have special just designated people that just go on Twitter and Instagram and try to pull stuff? Like, how do you guys do that?
We do have designated people that handle social media and our website and stuff like that. I would say in the last 10 years, my business has dramatically changed. We are no longer a television station. We are a multimedia station. It's about how people are consuming news nowadays. This device right here is how most people are getting their news.
Yes.
I think there's, a lot of people still sit down, especially in Hawaii. A lot of people still sit down and will watch the 5, 6, and 10 o'clock news. More so in this state we've seen than a lot of other states. But they're consuming news, whether it's on their laptop computer or on their mobile device, all day long. So we've had to change our focus from, the way it used to work was a reporter would have an entire day to put a story together, and then you'd see it on the 5 or 6 o'clock news. Mm-hmm. Now they're working on that story immediately. There's a story up online by a certain time each day. There's a story, they're teasing their story on social media, and by the time it airs at 5 and 6 o'clock, a lot of people already know some of the information that's in that story, so they've got to be able to give them different nuggets. An example is, on an average day, we get about 80 to 100,000 people watching an individual newscast. So we've had to shift our reporters' mindsets, which has not been easy. When I started telling them I wanted their stuff done on digital first, their mindset needed to change, because they've always been programmed to, okay, I got to get my story ready for the 5 o'clock news. Well, if you've got 80 to 100,000 people watching that 5 o'clock news, multiply that by 5 that will see their story on our digital platform, whether it be on our website or on our Facebook page or on our OTT platforms. So they had to literally reshift their mindset of, I now have to do digital first because that's where our consumers are, and then TV second, which has been a real big change for how we've operated for years.
Yeah. Now, when you guys are doing TV stuff, you guys have editors and guys, you have, a news director like yourself. Do you guys vet the news first before it goes on TV? You guys do, right?
We always vet the news, yeah.
So how has that changed with social media when people want the news now?
A lot of the stuff that you're seeing on social media is the breaking news. That's the stuff that we try to get out there immediately. It's still vetted, but it's information that's happening as we speak. The stuff that goes out on television, there are a lot of eyes that see those stories before they hit air and before they're complete. And on the digital side as well. So if a reporter is writing a story for digital, it will go through 2 or 3 sets of eyes before it ends up on the website.
Okay. So how does news media or like the local news keep from being blockbuster?
Keep from being blocked. What do you mean?
Compared to Netflix. In this coming digital age where people are less and less inclined to sit at the TV at 6 o'clock in the evening or 5 a.m. in the morning or whenever your times are and actually sit down and watch the news because their lives are busier. And like you said, we have these devices where we can get that news quickly, so we don't necessarily have to sit there and watch the news.
I'm not sure you can stop that. I think, streaming has changed the way people's lives work. I will tell you, I think a lot of our news, especially in the 10 o'clock, I do it myself. I DVR it. And so I'm watching whatever shows I'm watching during the night, and then I'll go back and watch our 10 o'clock news at 11 or 12 o'clock before I go to bed. But we also stream all of our news. So we stream all of our news on all of our platforms. So that way those that want it can still get it in live time if they've gotten away from the traditional cable or satellite providers. It's still there for them. So you've gone from just a few years ago, we had TV. Okay. In the last decade or so, maybe a little bit more, now you have a website. Now you have a YouTube channel. Now you have an Instagram page. Now you have a Facebook page. Now you have Twitter. I mean, so there are what was one before, which was just television that we all operated on. Now there's 7 or 8 different ways that people can get news from.
Are you guys finding that things like when a blackout happens, people want to know exactly now what caused that blackout? Like, are people coming to news stations and wanting that and complaining that they didn't get the news fast enough? Have you seen that?
Sure, we've seen that from time to time.
Like, what happened? Because last week they had a blackout, and then I think earlier this week AT&T had a blackout where AT&T wasn't working for like an hour.
Sure.
And people...
that's right. On Tuesday.
Yeah, AT&T users weren't able to call 911. Like, their phones were bricks. They weren't doing anything. Do people want to know, like, hey...
They want to know.
What happened?
They want to know.
And are we being attacked?
They want to know, and they want to know it on their time, not when it takes us to get it, which is hard. But, look, let's go back to January of 2018. We all woke up that morning when the phones started going off that there was, a ballistic missile heading towards Hawaii.
Yeah.
It took us 12 minutes to get an alert sent out that said that it wasn't, that it was, a false alarm. But that was 12 scary minutes, you know? I mean, and for everyone that day, it was, and everyone wanted to know. And then, so immediately the first alert that comes out was, okay, all right, there's no, and then it was why? Why? Why did we get this message? And it's like, okay, we need to start gathering that information and get that information as quickly as possible. And it's, so yes, news consumers want it. They want it on their time, and they want it sent to them as quickly as possible. It is very different than driving home from work at 5 o'clock, eating dinner, sitting down with the family, and watching the news of the day. Now people want it instantly.
Yeah, because that doesn't happen all that often anymore, where you're sitting down as a family watching the news or anything like that.
Very rare.
I mean, one thing is you're getting your news on different outlets also, but there's so much entertainment content out there and streaming services, and we just got Disney Plus now, so it's like, why watch the news? I saw what happened on the news online, and why do I have to sit down and watch it when I can watch, The Mandalorian? It's Friday.
No, you're absolutely right. So that's competition for us is to make sure that we continue to find the news consumer where they are, when they are, and get it to them. So that's why we're opening up different avenues, whether it's with Facebook Lives or with podcasts or with, streaming our newscasts, because we're trying to find the consumer where they are. They're no longer TV viewers, they're news consumers, and we've just got to be where they are to keep them informed.
It's so hard. There's so many things. I mean, now you got apps like TikTok. It's like, are you going to start going on TikTok?
You're battling everything.
You're battling everything, and then as soon as you get and grasp like one app or one avenue of social media, another one pops up, and it's just like, what?
That's a great that's a great point. I mean, just a couple of years ago, we invested so much in Facebook, and it was about building likes and building a fan base on Facebook and getting our news out on Facebook. And then it was like, okay, now we got to get to Instagram. And before that, it was Twitter, and now it's OTT, and we've got a channel on Roku and Amazon Fire, and we're constantly, and tomorrow there'll be something completely new that we'll get into that realm, and we'll have to figure out, okay, how do we tackle this one? The great part of it allows us to keep creating, which is the part of the job that I love, being innovative and being able to say, okay, we've come up with something new. We are offering Hawaii something that's completely new, and we're finding a new group of people that are consuming our news. I think one of the things that you got to look at now is you've got the older population that tend to stay with television. That's how they came up. That's where they want to be. You've got the middle-aged folks, which are, okay, it's TV and I'm getting it on my phone. Mm-hmm. And then it's the millennial folks that, they're not watching TV at all. They don't have cable. They're streaming everything. And you've got to figure out, okay, now it's Instagram and stuff to get them their news. And that's where they want it. So and that's why I have a wide variety of people from all different age groups in the newsroom, because we've got to try and meet the needs of everyone, not just one select group.
So you find yourself doing different kinds of outlets based on the generational audience.
Yeah, I mean, I think you do. I think we know where the different groups are.
Yep.
So we just got to tackle them differently. I've got a younger kid in my newsroom who's tackling Instagram TV because that's his generation and he knows that's where they want to go. I've got a group that's very good at Facebook, and so they've hammered away at Facebook. I mean, in 10 years' time, Facebook, we've gone from 0 likes to over 1 million likes. That's more than 1 million people that are following our news stream in one way or another. And there's a very large portion of it that's not from Hawaii, because this is a destination place and people want to know what's going on here. And then there's another group that handles the TV side of things and handles the TV news, but we've got to touch all these different platforms every single day.
Yeah, and I think when you bring that up, it's one of the reasons why I wanted to start a podcast here in Hawaii, because I didn't feel like it was this kind of talking story with people was being covered here in Hawaii. It wasn't happening. I couldn't find anything like this on podcast streams or on YouTube or anything like that. And so I was like, hey, this is a little niche that maybe is not being filled. So let's try it. And like you said, it's hard to get viewers. It's hard to get people connected and wanting to know what your message is. And it's hard to retain that because there's so much other information out there. There's so many other channels. There's so many other news media outlets that are easily getting the same information you guys are or that I am, and it's hard to put that out there. So you try to find anything different. So is there anything that you guys are doing differently that the other news agencies are doing or aren't doing?
I don't know if it's differently. I feel like we do it better. That's my competitive side. We're always trying new stuff. You talk about podcasts and how you've started this one. We've started podcasts now because we feel like there are different ways that we can reach viewers. I look at podcasts. I don't listen to radio on my, I have a 45-minute to an hour commute every day from Mililani to get into the station. I haven't listened to traditional radio in probably 10 years. One, I don't think that there's anything on there that I want to listen to. I like listening to podcasts, and I listen to Howard Stern on satellite radio. So that's and I think there are a lot more people now that are doing the exact same thing, that are listening to podcasts on the way in. So if we can offer them news, that they can get their news on their ride in the morning, even if it's in just a 5-minute, clip, we'll do that. Now I've got one of my reporters, Jim Mendoza, who's been in the business for 30 plus years. He's one of the best reporters that I've ever seen in this town, and he's told some incredible stories over the last 30 years. Jim is doing a podcast on some of the best stories that he's ever done, because Jim's one of those guys where, people, I hear this all the time. When are you ever going to tell some good news? All I ever see on your newscast is bad news. Well, then you're not watching Jim's stories, because that's what Jim does. He's like Hawaii's Steve Hartman. He's finding those good stories.
Now, is he going to be doing new content, or are they taking his old content that he's already done and has been recorded and making that a podcast?
Well, what they're doing is they're taking bits of his old content, and he's talking about why he did certain stories and what he got out of certain stories.
Nice.
On them. He's done a couple of episodes so far. We've got a new podcast that's also a Facebook Live every day called This Is Now, where Ashley Nagaoka and one of my producers, Jonathan Soppy, they're doing about a 20-minute, it's really a newscast for people every day at 11:30. That goes on Facebook Live, and then we post it to podcast as well. So it's just giving people different places that they can find Hawaii News Now.
Very cool, because you need to do that. And I think, are other news agencies not doing that kind of thing, that kind of podcast with the Hawaii News Now? Did you call it Hawaii Now?
We have a Hawaii News Now podcast page, okay. And then This Is Now is one of our shows that's on it.
I've seen that.
Others are dipping their toe into it, the same way that we are. I think we're a little further along.
Good. Got to be ahead of the game, man.
I think the most important thing for us in my business, you have to be relevant, and we have to be relevant every day. I mean, it's the only way that people are going to keep coming to us and keep paying attention to the things that we're doing, and that's what we try to do every day, is stay relevant on whatever platform that we're on.
Now, talking about relevancy, it's like the newspaper. Like, it's slowly but surely becoming irrelevant to the point where my kids aren't going to read the newspaper.
No.
They're not going to go buy a newspaper and read the paper. It's just not.
I don't read the newspaper. I'm 48 years old and I don't read the newspaper. Now, I will read them online, but I don't actually physically pick up a newspaper. I haven't in a bunch of years.
But it's like online, it's not the newspaper anymore. It's just another news agency putting out journalistic content, right? So what's the difference between the news, a newspaper agency putting it out on an online platform versus a local news network putting it out on news network? Well, I guess one of the big things
honestly, it's who you trust the most as far as going to it and reading it. But I think all newspapers across the country are fighting this battle right now.
Well, I think what you have there is you have the newspapers that don't have like the face and the voice. They're not doing the video content that the cable news networks and the local news networks already have pat down. And that's a huge difference with the modern social media and modern societies. They want to watch somebody talk to them. They don't want to look at something necessarily and scroll through reading page by page all of that information.
Well, I think the other thing is it's a rat race out there.
Totally.
And people's time is limited, and so you've got to, nobody wants to read a long column in a newspaper anymore. They want to be able to get it. And if you can give it to me in a minute and a half and I feel like you've given me the entire story, that's what I want.
Nice. Exactly my thoughts. What makes Hawaii's News Now, or what separates you guys from the competition here in Hawaii? Or what makes you guys different?
I think a lot of the stories are similar. If you look at newscasts each night, you'll see similar stories on the newscast. I think where we're different than everyone else is, we have people in our newsroom that are very passionate about this place, both on camera and off camera. Every single on-air personality that I have has a tie to Hawaii some way or another. I've got someone from every island except for Lanai. So when they're telling those stories are deeply passionate to them. They're community based. All of my on-air talent are involved in the community one way or another. They all have different causes and different things. If you go to events all throughout the year, there's someone from Hawaii who's now, in the community all the time. So it's deep for them. It means something to them. And I think as we look at the stories that we tell every day, it's about this place and about, how, we've got to tell the stories of Hawaii, whether it's, why is it so difficult to live here? Why are people being priced out? We're trying to tell those stories. Why is there so much homelessness on the streets? I mean, we're trying to tell those stories because it matters to the people in our newsroom. And I think that's what kind of differentiates us a little bit from the competition, because some of those folks, they're only here for a pit stop and they're here for a couple of years. So you really don't get, that deep. I can say this with confidence. Every single on-air personality that I have in my newsroom could work someplace else. They choose to live here, they choose to be here, and they choose to work in this community because it matters to them.
And that's just a huge advantage when you have people that are passionate about the project, passionate about the job that they do. They're going to love doing it.
They're going to love doing it. I think people talk to them more. It opens up doors to different stories, and it opens up doors in certain things that they're doing because people are willing to talk to them more because they feel like they know them. They feel like Sunrise, for example. I am proud to say that Sunrise has been on the air for 12 years now. I started it back in 2007. And when I was putting Sunrise together, I had one goal in mind, and that was to give people of Hawaii a reason to wake up in the morning. And so when we were looking at how we were going to do the show, okay, you could be very formulaic and put together a news program that did last night's news and, weather and traffic. Those are the staples of morning news. But then the other thing became, we needed personalities. We needed people that you liked, people that you felt comfortable with. And you're going to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to watch these folks. So those were the type of people that we went out and found. Steve Uehara is the local boy from Mililani, as wholesome as can be. And, people love that about him. People love that he's from here and he's part of the community and he's, and so it becomes easy to wake up in the morning to watch Steve or Guy for that matter. And so that's how we look at going about things. Yesterday, I lost a great anchor. Sean Ching called it quits. And he didn't call it quits because he was tired of the business or, he did it because he's a new dad. And it's been well documented and written about. His wife and his child went through some complications, and he just decided, I need to be more part of my family than doing the news. And I completely supported that 100%. We all did at the station. And it's sad to see him go because he was a great colleague. He was a great guy to work with, but everyone supported it because it was important. So now my job is to go find that next person that's going to sit next to Stephanie in the 5 o'clock news. I can tell you right now, I'm looking at someone who has ties to Hawaii, who went off to the mainland, did their tour there, and maybe wants to come back because they've always wanted to come back at some point. I'm looking for someone who has a tie to Hawaii, not just anyone to put in that seat.
Now, when you bring up you're looking for new blood and stuff, how does someone who's maybe has some sort of interest in being on the newscast or has an interest in being a journalist or anything like that, how do they get involved with news here in Hawaii?
Okay, there's a couple different ways. It's what I've found over the last couple of years, especially in the recruiting game, is why it's become very difficult to recruit too. There are not many journalists locally here that want to come work for us because they're just not being homegrown anymore. Then it leads me to I've got to start looking for people on the mainland and stuff like that. And this is not the easiest place to come to. One, our cost of living is, the same as San Francisco and New York, yet we can't pay those amounts as much as we'd like to. We do the best that we can do, but it's difficult. And so you're trying to allure someone to come to Hawaii, and that part is easy because, the beaches, the sun, that's the easy part. Once they get here, what I've found is, and this happened to myself. I mean, luckily, I married a local girl, so that my transition was a whole lot easier coming here. But if you're coming from the mainland and you've never been to Hawaii before, either you love this place and you dive into it, or 6 months from now you've got rock fever and you can't wait to get out of here. So, when recruiting, we're really looking for those people that, okay, they're in it for the long haul. How do you get into the business? The question that gets asked to me all the time. Do you need to have a journalism degree? I think that helps, but I'm looking for smart people. We can teach you the journalism side, and it's not always just about journalism. There's a lot of different facets to our operation, whether you're a photographer, an editor, or we can teach. I'm looking for smart people who've got ideas, who are innovative. You come to me with that, and we'll find a place for you. The best way for young journalists to get in the door is get an internship. That's how I started in this business almost 26 years ago. I got myself an internship, and I stayed at that internship till they finally gave me a job because I just wouldn't leave the damn internship. And
do you guys offer internships?
We do offer internships, and
is that just at the college level or above, or high school level also?
It's at the college level. We have dabbled a little bit in the high school level. The problem is, because of state laws, we can't, you've got to, it's either got to be for credit or we have to pay you because, people just can't work for free like I did 26 years ago and just kept showing up every day because I wanted to be in the business. So, we do it for college credit, and so we see an influx in interns in the summertime. That's when everybody's home from break and stuff like that. We're working with UH to try and get more interns in the room. I would love to see a whole bunch of them every single day. We've got a couple that are working right now, but that's the best way. First off, that's on the job training as soon as you walk in the door. Secondly, and this is the most important thing for prospective journalists who are trying to figure out, how to get into this business. Get in there and dive into it. Are you getting paid? No. Are you getting credit for school? Yes. But take advantage of, you're in a newsroom, you're in that environment. Ask questions, become known in the room. A lot of the folks that I've hired are former interns in our room because when they left their internship, we knew who they were because they showed up on time. They took on more shifts. They wanted to be part of it. So we treat our interns like they are employees. We've got them, gone to the days of go get coffee and pick up the dry cleaning. You're actively in, once we feel like you're ready, we'll send interns out to do interviews and, to help gather facts for stories and stuff like that. We want them to be a part of the operation so that, when your internship's over in a couple of months and you're starting to look for that first job and you put your resume on my desk, it's like, oh yeah, I remember, him or her. And it's like, they were great. If we've got a position, let's figure out a way to get them into this room.
Should they leave out on those resumes whether or not they're a Yankees fan or not?
Well, that would help.
Not a Yankees fan. Pats forever. Yeah. That always helps, right?
Yeah, it always that helps.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, because I would like to see, the local news stay local.
Yes.
I think local people in general just want to see a local face, local voice, when they're turning on the television or when they're going on their new social media devices, looking at stuff. They want to see that the stuff at the national level stays there and the stuff at the local level stays local. And we can tell. We can tell if you're not local.
I want to recruit people from Hawaii. The problem is, it's a small pond out there right now, and there's not a lot of fish in it, and we're not seeing that locally. So that's why we've got to go to the mainland sometimes. And look, I'm from the mainland, but I've been here 17 years. I want people, who are in journalism school at UH and want to stay at home and want, to find their way to the business. There's no better way than with Hawaii News Now and getting your first job in journalism here.
And that's also happening with like the short of recruitment with the police department here. They just announced yesterday that they're opening up lateral applicants to officers across the country. If they're already police officers, you can apply, and we'll go through a transition process so that you can skip the academy, maybe just go through a stunted version of it, but come into the police department a lot quicker.
And that wasn't the case just a couple years ago, right?
Absolutely not. This is brand new. The Honolulu Police Department has never done a lateral transfer as far as I know.
Wow. Yeah, and I saw the other day, I think we reported that there's about 250 openings right now in the police department. That's a big hole.
It's always been a big hole. We haven't actually filled that hole with the recruitment that we're doing. And it's solely because it's hard to find qualified recruits and qualified applicants to, pass all the tests and pass the background investigations and whatnot, and then want to do the job, once you get there, because it's not an easy job.
Yeah.
Even just going through the academy, it's not easy. It's not something that the normal college kid has gone through.
Do you see parallels? Do other police departments have the same issues on the mainland as that we're having here? Or is it, again, because we're an island state 2,500 miles away from everyone, that trying to draw someone here is a little bit different? It's a lot easier if you're a police recruit in Oklahoma and you can't get a job in Oklahoma, but you go up to Colorado and you can get a job there. It's a lot different when you've got to come across the Pacific.
It's a lot different. And here in Hawaii, our department is one of the only departments that will allow a non-U.S. citizen to be a sworn officer. Most states, you have to be a U.S. citizen to even apply. They won't even let you go through the process if you're not a citizen yet.
Wow.
So here in Hawaii, that's one avenue that we're looking at with bringing in recruits. It's not just from across the country; it's from other places around the world. As for other departments around the country, I know they have recruiting issues because they're pulling officers from Hawaii to go over there because they know Honolulu officers especially have been well trained and have gone through the process and know what they're doing most of the time. And so when they're getting an applicant from the Honolulu PD, they know that they're getting someone that's a quality worker who's been highly trained.
Yeah,
basically. Yeah. I think that hurts us here, though. I think it's well known that the cost of living in Hawaii is high.
Sure.
So bringing in recruits from outside, it's hard because they have to move here to a place that's completely foreign to them that they can't just drive away. Yeah. They can't pick up and move to another town or anything like that. They're stuck here on this rock if they do come here. And then you have the local population that's just, whether they're not interested in getting a job like this or they're just not qualified to because of their level of education. They can't, they just can't pass the test and stuff like that. The numbers have dwindled.
Yeah.
From the time when I got in, over 16 years ago, we used to go and take the test and there would be thousands of people taking the test, and now it's hundreds.
Yeah.
It's not, you don't have a ton of people trying to get in anymore.
No. And you're absolutely right. The cost of living is just killing us here. Mm-hmm. I mean, literally we are pricing people out of paradise that, and we're seeing the influx that they're moving to the mainland because it's cheaper. Las Vegas, for example, is getting a lot of Hawaii transplants. I mean, they always have, but now I think more so now than ever. I think the mayor was saying the other day that this might be the second year in a row that there's, the growth is gone down. I mean, it's not positive, and and that's, we're seeing more homeless people in the streets, and homeless has been a big issue for us for the last couple of years, and we've really kind of banged away at it. But, we had someone told my boss the other day, stopped him in the grocery store and said, all that stuff you've done on homeless, it hasn't changed it one bit. And, while I think we've shed a light on something that's, a problem in our society, he may be right in the sense of there may be more homeless people on the street now than there ever was 4 years ago.
There is, yeah.
And it's because of how difficult it is to live here. And so, when we were talking, off camera a little while ago, I've got 2 kids, both teenagers, one getting ready to go off to college. And it's like, can he even, once those 4 years are over, can he even, attempt to come back here and be able to live? Well, you better have a really good job to be able to live here and be able to withstand a lifestyle that he's become accustomed to growing up. And it's just not easy.
But he's going to have to move back in with mom and dad. Like, he's not going to be able to come back here, get a job, and get his own apartment and place and everything like that. It's just too expensive to do that for someone starting out out of college.
You're absolutely right. There's so many people on this island that are multi-generational families, because they can't afford their own home or place to, or a condo or an apartment. I mean, an apartment building, outside of Honolulu will cost you $2,500. I mean, and I love the quote that always comes up, and we do it in the news all the time is, we need more affordable housing. You know what I need somebody to do? I need somebody in this town to tell me what affordable housing is, because I'll tell you right now, $400,000 in Kaka'ako is not affordable housing.
That's for like a 1-bedroom.
Yeah.
It's like,
I mean,
who's that affordable to?
Right. It needs to be deemed what affordable actually is for the people that need the housing right now. And $400,000 is not affordable.
Not going to cut it. And that's just going to exasperate the homeless issue, because if people can't afford to live here, and I mean, the jobs are there, people can get jobs too. But even the jobs, like the minimum wage and stuff, that's not enough to support, to support any type of living here.
$10 an hour is going to get you about $27,000 a year. I mean, you're going to need 3 of those jobs to be able to.
Right.
The medium income, I think, in Hawaii right now is about $67,000 for a household. It's about $98,000. That doesn't go a long way. No. When you're paying a mortgage and you're paying all your bills and you're paying your kids' education and stuff like that, it doesn't go far.
No.